It's Masters Week, and for fans of golf, this coming weekend brings arguably the most special, certainly the most magical date on the calendar, Sunday at Augusta National Golf Club. The only major to be held at the same venue every year, Augusta National carries an aura that is unmatched in the world of golf. And what a Masters we potentially have in store this week. Last season was all about Rory McIlroy, his second major championship victory at the US PGA and string of other big wins to announce himself as the undoubted new star in golf. But in 2013, Tiger Woods has roared back in quite spectacular fashion, seizing the number one ranking from his young rival with 3 huge wins on the PGA Tour and entering this Masters as the clear favourite to end an 8-year drought and claim his 5th green jacket. I'm here with Justin Parsons to preview the event, and I think, JP, the first question really has to be, what makes the Masters the most coveted prize in golf, and specifically the green jacket?
Well, I think the atmosphere surrounding the tournament, I think the venue itself, the fact that it's a season opener and you go there with the expectations of a new season ahead, the history of the tournament, every really great player in golf has won the Masters, and I feel as if when you look at it from all of those different parameters, it certainly is, one of the most special major championships. Certainly as a British guy, the Open ranks up there. But with all of the mystique around the Masters, I think it's got to be one of the most favoured tournaments of the year.
And the course itself. So much has been written about the golf course. It's obviously synonymous. Augusta and the Masters come hand in hand. It's the only major championship, as we mentioned, where the same venue is played year on, year out. There's been a lot of changes. When Tiger won so emphatically in 1997, he was going into the par fives with wedges. They toughened it up. They brought rough in. They had a few years there where it was won perhaps by not such flamboyant champions, the likes of Zach Johnson and Mike Weir. What kind of golf course is Augusta now, and what kind of player does it favour?
Well, of course, they've lengthened it a lot since '97, and as you say, they've brought the rough in. So, you're looking at somebody with a really strong suit in his ball striking, but with the changes in the greens, the elevation, the slopes, the speed of the greens, it brings in a short game master. We saw Zach Johnson not going, I think, at any of the par fives when he won. So, it really brings in a lot of players into the mix. You've got to think at this time of year, potentially we've had some unsettled weather throughout the world that, potentially a real long hitter is going to obviously have a bit of an advantage again. But the cool thing about the tournament is, that it's been proven that it's really anybody's. And when we look at the shorter players, the longer players, anyone's really in the mix for this week.
I think with the Masters, more than any other major, it's known for the flamboyance, the charges on the back nine, amen corner, the momentum and the roars that you can hear that ripple around the golf course, almost a cathedral effect as they funnel through the trees. We've seen it with Phil Mickelson recently, the way he swashbuckled against Lee Westwood, and Bubba Watson last year as well against Louis Oosthuizen, playing one of the greatest shots in major championship history, that wedge from the trees on the 10th. What is it about left-handers and Augusta National? What is it about the way Augusta sets up for a certain ball flight that left-handers who can hit that right-to-left shot off the tee, how does it favour them?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I think the way the golf ball's changed and the way golf swings have changed over the years has favoured a more trapping, almost steeper approach into the ball, and being able then for a left-hander, a very powerful left-hander like a Mickelson or a Bubba Watson, to fade the ball and being able to get it around those corners. 35 years ago, 40 years ago, it wasn't really going to be possible to cut a golf ball and hit it that far, but the players are so much stronger, the balls are more explosive, the equipment's much better, and I think that's why we're seeing some players who can contend in that fashion.
Let's talk about the favourites. It's obviously been the story of one man so far this year, a certain Mr. Eldrick Tiger Woods, who has really come storming back. I think there were a lot of people who wondered whether he'd ever win a major championship again. I don't think anyone ever doubted that he would win again, but certainly question marks over his performances in the majors, and we saw that last year where he got himself into contention in 3 of the 4 and then fizzled away with very disappointing weekends. But he's really back in rude health in 2013. He's obviously made some big improvements to his game. Where has he made those key improvements, and what kind of shape is he in as the clear favourite for the Masters?
I think, the main thing I've seen improve in Tiger's game is his wedge play and his putting. And Tiger can always compete. And what we're going to see, I believe, in the Masters, for Tiger Woods to win the golf tournament, we're going to have to see him improve his driving. Tiger Woods has hit the golf ball high, left to right off the tee this season. He's hit it with some semblance of control now in the early part of this year, but he's improved his wedge distances and he's improved his putting again. I believe if he has a strong week with the driver, he can put this tournament away, but I believe if the driver starts to go away from him again, I think he'll struggle at Augusta.
Okay, well, the story last year, of course, was very much Rory McIlroy. Fantastic year, almost a dominant year, really. He won the USPGA Championship at Kiowa Island and followed that up with 2 wins in the FedEx Cup playoffs to really cap off a fantastic year where he was the clear world number 1, JP. And then it's been a roller coaster 2013, really. It started with the big announcement that he'd make the switch to Nike Golf and the new clubs obviously changing wholesale throughout the bag. And then there was swing difficulties, there was a loss of form, there was the walk-off at the Honda Classic that was controversial. Rory's had his fair share of explaining to do this year. But we've seen a glimpse, haven't we, just last night at the Valero Texas Open, that he may be hitting form at the right time. What have you gleaned from Rory's year, and is he capable of winning on a course that should suit him so well?
Well, of course, Rory does a lot of his work, pre-season work here at the golf school, and we watched him trying to get used to the equipment. And I think any of us who change all 14 clubs in the bag and our golf balls are going to have some teething problems. And the fact that Rory's had to do that under the glare of the media spotlight and in front of us all, has left us thinking about perhaps is it the ball, is it the driver? If we combine that with the fact that he's had a schedule change, he's changed where he lives in the world, and he's also had some issues with his golf swing, I think that's where we've seen a drop in his usual form. It was funny, I texted Michael on Michael Bannon, Rory's coach, on Friday night, and I said to him that I think you fixed the takeaway. And Michael called me and told me about the little drill that they'd done in order to fix this, because I walked around at the Honda Classic whenever he was clearly having some problems with his golf swing. And Rory's a thoroughbred. He's got a lot of gears to go up, and when he gets his golf swing into the sort of situation that he can get it into, you got to watch him, because he's going to go away from you. He
said some interesting things just this week, actually, in the press, where he doesn't want to be known as a boring player. He doesn't want to settle for consistency, top tens. He'd rather experience the lows, but the highs are going to be so high, as we've seen with Rory. I mean, he's won 2 majors by 8 shots, and I don't think the lack of form should be so much of a concern for Rory as it may be with other players going into the Masters. He's quite capable, it would seem to me, of just flicking the switch and turning up in, as you say, just a different gear at Augusta. It's a golf course that should suit him. Obviously, he had a nightmare experience in 2011 on the back 9 when he led by 4 going into Sunday's final round. Would you expect that to play any part should he get into contention again?
I mean, the only thing that potentially goes away from Rory sometimes if he starts to overturn or overdraw the ball, and there's certain holes at Augusta you really can't go too far left. We saw him in Rays Creek at 13 whenever he went through that difficult time. I think he shot 80 in the last round. He hit a couple left last night in the Texas Open, so there is still that potential for the club to get underneath a little bit and him to hit it too far left. But we're talking again about a guy who, when he gets his long game on song, he can just go away from everyone. He hits it closer to the hole from longer distances than any other player in the world. He's probably the best fairway wood player in the world, and I think that if he can get that long game dialed in, he can certainly get away from this field.
Yeah, now bringing the discussion on Masters favourites to a close, it would be remiss of us not to mention a man who really has made Augusta his own personal playground in the last 7 or 8 years. He broke through in 2004 with a spectacular duel against Ernie Els, JP, one of the best afternoons in Masters history, and has subsequently won a further 2 green jackets. It's Mr. Phil Mickelson. We saw him in 2010 against Lee Westwood play that incredible shot out of the pine straw. He obviously feels a real sense of connection to Augusta. It brings out his best game. He's in perhaps one could say the autumn of his career, but do you expect him to bring his best game to Augusta this week?
Phil's got an amazing passion for Augusta, and he shares that passion with his coach, Butch Harmon, who always drills him and gets him ready for Augusta. So they work very, very hard on the driver. I think he's had a couple of drivers in his bag a couple of times at Augusta. They work very, very hard on his iron play and his distances. The worrisome thing with Phil at the moment is he's gone back from the claw grip on his putter and he's back to the regular grip. He had a fairly tumultuous 4-putt, I think it was, or it was maybe even closer to a 5-putt in one of the recent tournaments. So, if you take a little bit of fragility on the greens, but with you to Augusta, it can be a tough playground for him. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him contending by the end of the week.
Okay, well, those are the three clear favourites, shall we say, but there are a host of names that could certainly put themselves into green jacket contention come Sunday afternoon. It really has been a varied year on the USPGA and the European Tours so far. We've seen America dominate, really, with 14 straight victories, broken up by Martin Laird's win last night at the Valero Texas Open. But if you look at the form players, they do tend to come from the States this year. You've had Brandt Snedeker before his injury on great form. Steve Stricker's shown glimpses. Matt Kuchar won the match play. Hunter Mahan's been on form as well. Of those Americans, who do you see as the most likely to contend?
Snedeker is an unbelievable putter, and I take an unbelievable putter to Augusta, and you think that he can perform. We haven't really seen Snedeker in the majors just yet. A couple of the times he's been up there, he maybe hasn't performed very well. He's got a little bit too fast and started to move some shots around. It could be Kuchar's year. I mean, Kuchar's from that part of the world. He's from Atlanta. He's a native to Georgia, and I'm sure it's very special going to Augusta for him. Hunter Mahan, maybe haven't seen him in just as consistent form of late. And certainly there's a lot of young American players starting to break through. When I was at the Honda more recently and, last night, there are a lot of good young American players breaking through. So, I think that, Ryder Cups and Masters and Opens are all gonna start to be redominated, if you like, by American players.
Well, there's been a focus on British players at the Masters in the last few years. Lee Westwood certainly had his chances. Justin Rose contended in 2007, and there's always a spotlight on Luke Donald and Ian Poulter, and their ranking has really suggested that they ought to do better in these major championships. They haven't thus far, and it seems to be a mental block with these guys. Of those four players, who do you like?
I think when I've watched Rose, and I've been very mindful of what he's done in his career. Technically, he's probably one of the best players in the world. Ball striking's unreal. Good putter now. He's worked on a lot of stuff with his putting, and Justin just needs to find it at the right time, I feel. Poulter, kind of the opposite. He's got all the mental components ready to go out and dominate world golf, and if he gets his long game to a point where he's comfortable with it, I think he could equally go a long way. Donald and Westwood, great players, multiple winners. Donald, short game specialist. Westwood will just grind you with his consistency, and all of these guys have got to have a chance if it goes their way.
Okay, well, we've given you a rundown of the leading contenders for this week at Augusta, but I'm going to put JP on the spot now, and I'm going to ask JP for your prediction. Who is going to be just helping themselves into a green jacket come Sunday night, and who would be perhaps a slightly less favoured tip, but someone that you think has the potential to win a green jacket?
I like Charles Schwartzel for this. I know Charles won a few years back. I watched him in his warm-up routine at the recent Honda Classic, and he's just off the charts with his ball striking. His golf swing has tidied up a lot over the last couple of years. He was extremely dominant in South Africa at the early part of the year, and he is a player who can really go away from fields, similar, if you like, to Rory with his ball striking and what he can do to things. So let's say Schwartzel for my overall pick. I think Ernie Els is someone who's really found that reignited kind of passion, albeit maybe like Phil in the twilight of his career. He's made some recent trips to Augusta. He's been strong with his performances in the early part of the year. He's at a recent 66 in the tournament in Thailand, I believe he played. So I love Ernie for an outside pick.
Okay, well, I know Ernie was desperately disappointed to miss out on a chance to win the green jacket last year. Perhaps he can recapture that form that he showed in 2004 when he came so close to beating Phil Mickelson in that famous duel. But I'm going to go for the left-hander as my outright pick to win the green jacket. His fourth green jacket. The last time he was victorious at Augusta was 2010 against a brave challenge from Lee Westwood. I just think the golf course and Phil are made for one another. I think the imagination of his short game, his shot shape, I think he brings his best game to that course, and I'm going to go for Phil to win on Sunday. As a dark horse pick, I'm going to go with an American who's going to be Matt Kuchar, the man who won the Accenture World Match Play Championship. He's been on some great form this year. When he gets the putter going, he's more than capable of contending on those slick greens. So those are our picks. We hope you look forward to the Masters this week at Augusta National in Georgia. ESPN and Fox Sports will be showing live coverage of the event at many of the golf clubs across the UAE, and we hope you manage to catch it.